I'm Andrew Murata, host of the Education, Leadership, and Beyond podcast, a part of the Education Podcast Network, just like the show you are listening to now. Shows on the network are individually owned, and opinions expressed may not reflect others. Find other interesting education podcasts at edupodcastnetwork.com.
Hey, welcome back. Steve here, and today I'm talking with Kevin Benson, the Executive Director for the Cooperative Purchasing Agency, or CPA, and he's also the Executive Director for the Southern Education Retirement Consortium, or SERC. We're joined by Danny Kofke, a personal finance expert and author of several personal finance books. Our focus is talking about what SERC is and how it can help you with your financial planning for retirement. So much to learn. Thanks for listening and thanks for sharing. And oh, by the way, before you go, it'd be so cool if you helped out the podcast. Hey, so here's 3 ways you could help the podcast. 1, tell a friend and share the links. 2, go to my website and leave a review and subscribe. And 3, how about click on the link on my website homepage where it says Buy Me a Coffee. And by doing this, you could donate $5 or more to help me address the costs associated with producing the podcast. What do you think? That'd be so cool. Thanks for listening. Thanks for sharing, and enjoy the show.
There's like 10 guys, and there was the Valak guy, and there was the Lincoln guy, and there was this guy and that guy.
Not just one guy. Godfather, huh?
No. And,
just a
and
bunch.
This guy had pizza, and this guy had donuts, and I was like, okay, which guy's the guy to go with? I don't know which guy to go with. Mm-hmm. So for me, that was kind of the first thing. I was like, wow, this is a lot more confusing. I thought I kind of had a little bit of a handle on this.
It's the Education Podcast, your favorite show, with lots of groovy guests and they share what they know. So crank it up to 10 and let your neighbors know that here's another show with Dr. Steve Milletto. Teaching, learning, leading, K-12. Teaching, learning, leading, K-12. Teaching, learning, leading, K-12. With Dr. Steve Milletto.
Kevin Benson serves as Executive Director for Cooperative Purchasing Agency, or CPA, and the Southern Education Retirement Consortium, SERC. In his CPA role, Kevin oversees a warehouse that provides office supplies, janitorial supplies, furniture, and USDA commodities directly to 35 school systems in North Georgia. Kevin also provides all school systems in Georgia access to national contracts through the Association of Educational Purchasing Agencies, or AEPA. Most recently, Kevin created the Southern Education Retirement Consortium, SERC, and in this role, Kevin strives to provide school systems and their employees, regardless of size, with unprecedented pricing, oversight, and control in the 403B and 457 markets. Kevin has been an educator for over 25 years as a teacher, assistant principal, and safety director. Kevin began his tenure at CPA in 2017 and has increased yearly profits tenfold. In 2021, Kevin won the AEPA Outstanding Sales Growth Award with a 745% increase in sales. Kevin has a Bachelor of Science from Kennesaw State University, a Master in Education from the University of Georgia, and an Educational Specialist degree from Liberty University. Also talking with Danny Kofke, a little about Danny. After being an elementary school teacher for 18 years, Danny Kofke recently left the classroom to work with Mentoro, a financial education company. His love of teaching and personal finance led him to write 5 personal finance books, including The Wealthy Teacher, Lessons for Prospering on a School Teacher's Salary. Danny's everyday approach to handling money has led him to appear on numerous television shows, including Fox and Friends, the CBS Early Show, CNN's Newsroom, The 700 Club, and The Clark Howard Show. He has also been interviewed on over 600 radio shows and featured in a number of publications, including USA Today, Yahoo.com, The Wall Street Journal, Money Magazine, and the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. He wants to show others if this former school teacher can do well financially, they can too. Our focus today is the Cooperative Purchasing Agency, CPA, and the Southern Education Retirement Consortium, SERC. Kevin and Danny, thanks so much for being on the show, and say hi to everyone.
Hey.
Glad to be here.
Yes.
Thanks for having us, Dr.
Yes.
Milano.
Well, glad to have you guys here. And before we get started, I just want to say to my audience that no money has exchanged hands. They're not paying me. This is not something that there's no remuneration here for this interview. They're colleagues. I work with them and I trust them and such. But as with any financial advice, I'm not a financial advisor, and with anything like this, I encourage you to do your own research and take a look at this as well. So with that being said, Kevin and Danny, both of you are former teachers. We're going to talk about wealth building and retirement planning and participating in programs that help. Before we do that, let's go here. What do you remember about onboarding in the school system when you were brand new teachers?
Well, Steve, I'll take that to begin with. And one of the interesting things about coming into a new system is you're coming in, you're setting up insurance, you're setting up all the different stuff. It is very confusing. And although you may have a good understanding of things, one of my first positions I ever did, I was a parapro in Michigan. And the secretary said, the valet guy's coming today. And I'm like, what's a valet guy? She said, it's the guy that comes in and you put some money aside and it helps you out when you retire. And I'm like, okay, I guess I'll see this guy. And he came in. And so right out of the gate, I had a little bit of an understanding, had good conversations with him. So when I moved to Georgia and went to different systems, I had an idea of what I was looking for. But one of the things that surprised me is when I came down here, there's like 10 guys. And there was the valet guy, and there was the Lincoln guy, and there was this guy and that guy.
Not just one Godfather, huh?
No. And,
just a
and
bunch.
this guy had pizza, and this guy had donuts. And I was like, okay, which guy's the guy to go with? I don't know which guy to go with. So for me, that was kind of the first thing. I was like, wow, this is a lot more confusing. I thought I kind of had a little bit of a handle on this and realized I didn't.
Yeah. And for me, and I love that you said that, because you start off with a good one, Kevin. You just had one guy, the valet guy, right? Mm-hmm. So I started, and this time I was in Florida. So I remember, 23 years old. And then it was a room full of people. And you remember those days as a brand new teacher, like, I got to get my classroom set up. I don't know what I'm doing. How am I even going to teach these kids? And then there's like 10 people in front of you. Hey, I'm here to save for retirement, and I'm with insurance, and I'm with this. And you're like, look, man, I'm worried about this week. I'm not worried about 40 years down the road. And very, very confusing. But for me, I'd kind of had two experiences with that. So the first one was when I was in Florida, and then I kind of figured out, okay, I went with a valet guy who happened to be there, and then moved up to Georgia a few years later. And because I was in a new county, had to go through the new teacher orientation again. And this is kind of honestly what started my career, actually kind of what I'm doing today. So I was in the audience, and a gentleman that's a friend of the show, Dale Alexander, he's with a benefits company here in Georgia. He did this presentation about it was like being a millionaire, and it was a motivational speech. And I didn't know Dale at that point. 2006 this was, and I'm like, I'm writing this guy's number down and I'm going to contact him. And I knew nothing about financially at that time, reached out to Dale, and then over the course of careers, my career, developed a relationship. I wrote some books, and kind of the interesting thing, a couple of years ago, I did a presentation at a school district, and Dale introduced me. So it was kind of like this full circle moment for me of he kind of inspired me to kind of do that. So, but once again, I mean, kind of what you were saying though, Kevin, for many educators and teachers, that first time we go in there, it's just so confusing on, hey, what even is retirement? What is a 403B? What's a 457? We don't know any of these things. So it can be a very difficult day.
As something else, especially because you give me flashbacks, man. This is when you switch school systems and stuff like this, and as a brand new teacher, especially if you're 23, 24 years old, and you're going, what? Mm-hmm. And the bigger the audience, I was in one school system where there were over 175, maybe close to 200 people in this auditorium type setting that they had, and these people at the front of the room were talking about, okay, now our assistants are walking around and handing out these papers to you, and before you can leave today, you need to make sure that you fill these out. And some of them were tax forms, by the way. Oh yeah. And I leaned over to the guy next to me and I said, what do you do with this? And he goes, don't worry. He goes, I've done this before. I know. I'll tell you how to do that. And so I did. At the end of that year, I owed a lot of tax.
Yes. Yeah. Well, in education, we love acronyms, and you didn't think anything else could have more of. Well, when it comes to the financial services, I think they got educators beat, because definitely make it confusing.
Exactly.
So right. All right. So when teachers and school system personnel on board, at some point, they're going to meet with a representative from HR, like I was talking about, and that person's talking about benefits. Why is this moment very important and should be taken very seriously?
Well, through this journey, I've been told, and I haven't verified this, but most people will make one change in their retirement plan over a 30-year period on average. If you don't get it right the first time and you stay in that same setting, you don't move counties or anything like that, that whatever choice you made to begin with, that's going to stick with you. So that's a pretty important choice if you're not going to go back and change things. So being able to have the necessary information to make the correct decision right away is important. But then also, like if in my case, I switch systems a lot. So I'd be in one for 4 or 5 years and I'd move to another one. Well, and sometimes the same person did the benefits and the 403B or 457, but then sometimes it wasn't. And then how do you kind of navigate that? So there, it's definitely a very important decision.
100%. Kevin and I were talking on the way over here. There was a book written a few years ago, good name, Shlomo Benartzi, and it's called Save More Tomorrow. And basically, and I don't remember, and I was telling Kevin the countries off the top of my hand, there are 2 Scandinavian countries, and they were looking at it. We'll just say Denmark and Sweden. One of them had like a 90% organ donor rate. The other one only had a 10% organ donor rate. So they did a study like, hey, they're, neighboring countries, maybe not this, but like close together, the people can't be that different. Well, it turns out when they signed up for their driver's license, one of them, there was auto enroll basically of you're going to be an organ donor unless you opt out. And the other, they had to opt in to be an organ donor. So you can guess the 90% that didn't opt out. So they used the same principles for the retirement plan. And like Kevin mentioned, you're probably not going to change. So if we do an auto enroll into an automatic retirement plan, most of us will not opt out. That one decision not to opt out, you do that for 30 years, it can be the most important decision of your life. So that's why it's really, really key. And, we'll get into talking more about SERC, but that is one element that I think is wonderful with it is that, if you want to have money in retirement, do nothing. And then you're going to be set up. So it's kind of a great benefit. But yeah, those days are so important. And once again, hit us at the wrong time. Everyone's so overwhelmed when you go back. You don't know what you're doing. And then, these are these important things that are going to affect probably the rest of your life if you do it correctly. And we expect you to make these decisions in 5 minutes when you're overwhelmed. Yeah, just not done well.
It is terrible, though. I think about some of those meetings I've been in, and you're looking, and especially when someone looks at you and says, well, I can't give you advice. You just have to figure this out.
Right.
I was like, what? It's okay. All right.
Yeah.
It's, so anyway, all right. So before we go any further, why should my audience of educators of all types, all right, because I have pre-service teachers to, the superintendents of school systems to post-secondary instructors and different levels. So I have them at all levels, K through 12 also, as administrators, teachers. Why should they keep wanting to listen?
Well, I think that, your future and your quality of life down the road is very important. And certainly with anything, even as I tell my own children, just because I believe something doesn't mean you should believe something. You need to make sure that you research and look at, my life experiences is going to determine my decisions and how I believe in things. And it's going to be different for my children, and they need to go out and explore, and they may end up viewing things the same way I do, or it may be different, but ultimately the decisions that you make and where you're going need to be formed by the information that you're getting. So it's very, very important that you open yourself up to different forms of communication, different forms of information that are coming in. And for us, we are state employees. So we, as we're presenting things here today, we're not getting rich off this. This isn't, if you do this, Kevin Benson doesn't personally make money. This is a service that we provide to make educators' lives better. And, let's face it, education is a lot harder than it used to be. And if we can make one little piece of it better for somebody, that's what we want to do. And we want people to, TRS, Teacher Retirement System in Georgia, it's fabulous. It's very good. But it's also a 40% pay cut if you go the full 30 years. So you have to plan for that, and there has to be some engagement on the front end in getting that information to set yourself up for success. And I know a lot of educators, it's kind of the cover the eyes, cover the ears, just tell me what to do and what's going to be the best so that I don't have to deal with it. But, having a little bit more engagement in that and kind of getting some additional information into the pie kind of helps you make those better decisions and, benefits you individually.
Very cool.
Yeah. And, for me, Steve, I've been on your show in the past talking kind of about my journey and helping others financially. I'm not really associated with Kevin, just colleague, friend. But what he's doing really excites me. And I think every educator, every school district personnel should listen to what Kevin is going to talk about with SERC because it's changing the industry. And Steve, you and I first met, 12 years ago when I was with another company that was on the path to doing what Kevin is going to talk about. That path kind of changed for that company, but I've never been more excited for a company of what he's doing for school teachers. And he'll get into SERC and how they're changing the industry. But I feel like in 10 years from now, we're going to look back at this interview and be like, that was the start of this. I mean, not only changing the state, but I feel like the country, and putting more money back on the pockets. Teachers, I'm biased. I was a teacher. My wife's still in education. I think teachers are the greatest people on earth. I want them to be able to have as much money as possible, and that's what SERC's going to do for them. So to me, if you're a school district leader, stay tuned, because Kevin's going to set you on fire. This is going to be great.
Cool. I love it. All right. So thank you very much. I appreciate the explanations here. And so now let's get into the meat of everything. So let's talk about CPA first, Cooperative Purchasing Agency. So what's its purpose and what's it do?
Okay, so CPA was actually created in 1971 by a former superintendent. And at the time, Atlanta only had 1 million people. And all these rural districts, you were out in the sticks and you had very small school systems and schools. And if you needed a load of paper, they weren't going to send an 18-wheeler to White County, Georgia, just to deliver, one pallet of paper. So you had to wait until they filled the entire truck up, so you couldn't get your stuff in a timely fashion. So he was like, okay, I'm going to go around to all these RESAs and systems and get everybody collectively together. We're going to put in money. We're going to build a warehouse. We're going to buy trucks. And that way we can house it here. And then when they need it, we can deliver. We can do it on a weekly basis or a bi-weekly basis and make sure everybody has everything they need. And then shortly thereafter, back in the day, you'd have to go pick up your USDA commodities in Gainesville from the train. So you'd have to drive up there to get it. And this is the days when they made school lunches from scratch. So you were talking 50-pound bags of flour, 55-gallon drums of cooking oil. So shortly thereafter, CPA got into the business of doing the USDA commodities. Fast forward, it's probably 1998. I'm a special ed teacher in Stevens County. And I said, hey, guys, I need to get some supplies for my kids. And they said, well, you got to use CPA. I'm like, well, what's CPA? And they said, a bunch of schools got together, built this warehouse. And I'm like, that's a really cool idea. That's a really cool idea. I said, who runs that? And they said, I don't know, some guy named Ray. I said, if Ray ever retires, I want that job. It took Ray 23 years to retire. But, God had it in his plan, and I ended up there. So it ended up working out. So CPA, when I came on board in 2017, basically, we did school supplies, office supplies, USDA commodities to the lunchrooms, small furniture, different things like that. We do some bigger projects with furniture occasionally, but that's kind of what we did. And then I had been safety director, so coming in, I'm like, safety was kind of near and dear to my heart. I'm like, we really need to start adding some additional things. So the funny thing is when I got the job, before I was actually even on the job, there was about a month delay between getting the job and showing up. I started thinking, okay, what other ways can we start to serve our customers? One, I was thinking about, technology stuff with safety and security, but then I was actually having a conversation with a gentleman from Gwinnett County School System. And we were talking about, joking around about how it must be nice to have made more money than me for every job that we had that had the same title, because, Gwinnett pays well. And we started laughing about that. And we started talking about teacher retirement and how good it is. And then he was talking about 403Bs and stuff. And he starts showing me stuff on his phone. And I'm like, what's that? And he said, well, this is my stuff. I can go in and I can look at my stuff and do different things and change the amounts. And I'm like, how do you have that? And he said, I don't know. I said, well, why don't I have that? And he said, I don't know. And found out that he had mutual funds and his fees were a lot lower. And I had an annuity product. And I'm like going, hey, I knew we made different money, but I thought we all had kind of the same benefits, state health benefit plan, all this other stuff. And I'm like, how does he have that? Well, come to find out, the size of the district makes a big difference, because there's a certain amount of cost to do a plan. And if you only have a small number of people, it's expensive. If you have a large number of people, it goes down per person. So I thought, well, you know what? If I'm going into cooperative purchasing, I want to create my own Gwinnett with 403Bs, because I should have the same options that he has. I know he's going to make more money, but the other stuff, we should try to even that playing field. So with CPA, we did start branching into the security solution stuff while I was continuing to work on building this idea of creating some type of consortium for the 403Bs. And we ended up joining an organization called AEPA, the Association of Educational Purchasing Agencies, which branched out of AESA, which is the research directors organization for the country. So about 25 years ago, they started this national cooperative. So we do field turf, we do cars, we do copy machines, we do roofing, we do a number of different things. And what I do is for AEPA, I bid all this stuff out, and I go through the Georgia procurement laws. I advertise everything on the Georgia procurement website, go through all the stuff. So any system in the state of Georgia, if they want to put field turf on their fields, that's $1 million pop right there. And, going through the whole bidding process, a lot of these smaller systems especially don't have a procurement department. Well, they don't need one now because I've already done all that for them. They will get the strongest pricing available, and they can use me, and basically it saves them that heavy lift. So then as time's gone by, we continued to build SERC, and but I'll kind of stop it there and see where your next question's going so I don't overdo it all in one question here.
Good stuff. I appreciate you explaining that, because it's a cool thing, and it's funny when you're talking about way back when having to deliver stuff, because then in the meantime, eventually they built malls and that expanded out these shopping centers, and you had these new stores that lasted for a while. That these names, I'm not sponsored by any of them, so anybody listening, like Staples and sure. Office Depot and stuff like this, which made it easier to get some of those materials and stuff like this. And then the internet comes along and kind of changes that also. Yeah. And so one of the things, though, the rural areas though are still at the mercy of whatever agreements they can make and stuff like this. So I totally see where CPA would fit into there. Now let's focus on the purpose of the Southern Education Retirement Consortium, or SERC, SERC. Where did the idea come from?
Really came out of that conversation, and I thought, what if I can build my own Gwinnett? What if I can bring all these folks together and just bring the cost down? That was the initial thought, because initially you're thinking, okay, we want to save people money. If you save people money, that can do it. So I started doing some research and said, okay, what if I could save everybody 1%? Is it even worth it for me to pursue this? Could I do enough to make a difference in somebody's life that they would want to do it? So I thought, well, what if I could save them 1%? What does that equate to? Well, 1% with an average contribution across the United States equates to about $45,000. So if I can save somebody 1%, and let's say that, you're in one county and you're in a neighboring county, one's got SERC, one doesn't, I save them 1%. 30 years later, you put in the same amount of money, somebody's got 45 grand more than the other person does. Well, 45 grand is not chump change. That's a nice amount of money. But then as I started going along, and I had pitched this to a bunch of different people, and, I won't name names of the people that I pitched it to, but the funny thing is nobody would respond to me. Like, we're having a conversation, they just smile at me. And I'm like, we really need to get together and bring these folks together and bring that, and they just smile at me. And so through a number of different conversations and stuff, I started getting some traction. We started building this. It took me 4 years to build, because when you're looking at a plan document determines what you get. So I'm like, okay, I'm building this as if I'm the teacher in the classroom. I want the most flexibility, but I want it streamlined enough that I get the best possible pricing. How do I build this in such a way that I can get the best of the best, having some options, but not an infinite number of options where it just messes everything up and brings the price back up? So the way I kind of can explain it is, if you had like 20 breaker boxes in a building with all the different breakers, you take the most important breakers out of each box and you build a separate box. So now you can control all of the things that's in all of those boxes, but you only have a much smaller number of breakers. Some of those breakers are on all the time and can't be switched off. That's kind of that streamlining. Some of those you can switch on and off depending on what your needs are. So, I had probably more knowledge than most people going into this, but I was still, I was just a guy with an idea wanting to help people out. So as I got into it, I had to kind of do a little bit more research and do a lot more educating of myself and that type of thing. Well, we started getting these plan documents, and there's a lot of different things of, can you take a hardship? Do you not take a hardship? Are you going to allow auto enroll? Are you going to auto enroll all people? And you're determining all this stuff and going through all of those things, looking at the pros and cons of each to make sure that it was still the best for that teacher that was in the classroom. Because again, if we don't create something that's better than what's out there, if we don't create something that's more streamlined that just provides more, then who wants to switch? Because this is a subject people don't want to talk about to begin with. So how do we make it so good that it's kind of the no-brainer? And I really kind of feel like that's what we've done through the process.
Yeah. Now I'll kind of go on what he said. So little Jeopardy time. So do you know how many counties there are in the state of Georgia offhand? I just looked it up.
180-ish.
Right here, 159 counties,
okay.
and that doesn't count the city schools either.
Okay.
So thinking of that, that's the second most in the country behind Texas. So we have a lot of small school districts here. So like Kevin mentioned, you have the big counties like your Gwinnett counties, Cobb's, Fulton's. So they have a lot of people that are investing for retirement. And even with the average individual investor, the more that you invest, then the fees go down. So like you had $100,000, maybe you're paying 5%. You get to $200,000, 4%, just to keep the math easy. Well, the same thing holds true with school districts. You have a county like Gwinnett County that has thousands and thousands and thousands of teachers. Well, they're already starting ahead of the game, right? Because they have this people, they go and they invest, their fees are automatically lower. But what about the smaller counties, your Gilmer counties, your Pickens counties, your smaller, what for them? They don't have as many people. So automatically teachers go in, and it has been for years, they're already behind because they're going to be paying more in fees because they don't have the population. Now, what SERC does and what Kevin has, was explaining, you pull them together. So you get all these small counties going together, and instead of maybe this one has 1,000, 2,000, 3,000, you pull them all together, and then all of a sudden it looks like we have a 15,000, 20,000 person county, and then right off the bat, your fees are lower because you're combined together. So that to me is what I think is so magical, because it's not fair. If I teach in a bigger county, why should I get better service with my retirement plan if I teach in a smaller county? And sometimes the smaller counties need more teachers and, to help those students. So it's not fair. And that's why, TRS, Kevin mentioned, teacher retirement system. It's the same for everyone across the state. It's the same, amount comes out of your paycheck, the 6.2% or 6%, whatever it is that comes out for every teacher across the state. Why not do the same for retirement savings? And that's what Kevin has done with SERC. And I think that's what makes it so unique and so amazing.
This is awesome. I mean, appreciate you guys talking about this and explaining it, because this is something that, I got to tell you, when you're okay now, colleagues, and this is not meant to be anything against anybody, but our focus is on working with kids and teaching whatever it is we're going to be teaching, or going from the classroom into administration, stuff like this. And a lot of times, what we're not thinking about is, usually we're focused on other people. What we're not thinking about is ourselves. And partly what goes with that is that, from time to time, there's those rare gems like Danny and like Kevin, and who have focus on some of these types of ideas. But you listen to a lot of people. That's why I'm sure why some people don't change anything about their benefits for 30 years, because do I really want to go there? And when they sit down and talk with somebody, their eyes glass over, and they're kind of like, where do I sign? Okay.
Right.
And there's been several examples, like a bad example of somebody like not touching things and changing things, working in the same county, getting divorced, marrying somebody new, not changing their dependents. And when they go into retire, something happens, the former wife gets the, what's there because they didn't change it. And that can cause, some difficulty. So that's an extreme example of not fixing something along the way and looking at it again. But, as we started to do this too, I thought, okay, well, how am I going to bid this out? How am I going to create this? And because as we grow in size, it needs to get better and better and better. So the way we did it was that you can think of it as like 3 pie plates to SERC. The center pie plate is the retirement consortium itself. I'm the executive director. Each county that joins us, they get a seat on the board of directors. They can have as many people attend the meetings as they want, but they still only get 1 vote. So each system, it can be the superintendent or their designee. So that's the board. They make some decisions based on the bylaws for SERC. Then you have another pie plate off to one side, which is the registered investment advisor. This is the guy that's like, or girl that's looking at all the details of what's this fund doing? What's it not doing? Should we put it on a watch list? Is that going to make us the most money? What is this doing? So that person actually reports back to the board and says, listen, this particular fund, we may need to pull it. And the board can vote on that and that type of thing.
And I'll add, the cool thing about that person, it's not biased. They're looking, I'm sure, at Morningstar or some of these other things that independent people that are rating the funds that are in there. There's no straight commissions on which funds are chosen, like in some other plans. So it's just very non-biased.
And we set this up as a 321 co-fiduciary situation under the tax code, the IRS tax code. So the registered investment advisor is the person that, they're actually a fiduciary. Their responsibility is to the customer. Then the third pie plate that's off to the side, now that's the one that people typically recognize. In our case, it's Corebridge Financial. Remember when I talked about the VALIC guy? Well, actually, VALIC investment advisors had become part of AIG, and then they had kind of branched back out as Corebridge. So Corebridge is technically VALIC, so a lot of people are familiar with VALIC. And through this process of due diligence and going through a RFP process to put these two entities, both the registered investment advisor and the record keeper, which is what VALIC is, in place, VALIC is truly a great gem to what we have, because they've got the boots on the ground. They've got the structural situation to be able to handle how in-depth this is going to be. So notice that we call it the Southern Education Retirement Consortium and not the Georgia Education Retirement Consortium, because it's actually the whole Southeast minus Florida. So the area that we plan to basically roll this out to, and we already have in many states, is going to be South Carolina, North Carolina, Tennessee, Georgia, Alabama, Mississippi, and Louisiana. We've also left it open that if there is somebody in the country that cannot find somebody like us and they desperately want to join us, that our CPA board of directors will entertain that at that time. But, this is something that really needs to be set up regionally by other people as well. But so what we did is we did a tiered pricing system. So if somebody gets in South Carolina, the more assets that gets brought in, the lower the price for the registered investment advisor, and the lower the price for VALIC. So coming into a standard school system, we're typically saving people about half in their fees right out of the gate. So what I did is I looked at this, and that's basically at our highest price point. We've already dropped. We're getting ready to drop again. And every $25 million that comes in, we have price drops. And if half the school systems in Georgia went with SERC at our highest price point, over the next 30 years, we would save them collectively $4.6 billion in fees.
Wow. Billion
with a B. So what does that mean? That means that depending on how much you're putting in, people are saving anywhere from one of our recent counties was on average about $25,000 per person over a 20-year period. And then we just had one that was like $54,000 over a 20-year period more that they'll have in their accounts simply because we showed up. So they get a higher level of service. They get better pricing. Now that app that the guy had that I was telling you about where he could go in and change things, now they can do that with us. Corebridge just put $45 million into their technology department. So people that become part of SERC, they can change how much is being deducted from their phone. If they need a hardship loan against that, they can do it. They can apply on their phone. So what that means for the county office of the school system, and because, I've worked closely with county offices for a long time as an administrator, and they're overworked and underpaid, and they've got a lot of stress on them. Well, I was like, how do we make this better on them? Well, now it's all automated. So anything that the employee does on the phone, it just automatically updates the system for the county office. So no more triplicate forms, no more figuring out what this is, what that is. And that just makes it so much easier.
I remember when I first moved to Georgia, it was actually back then pen and paper. If I wanted to change how much I'm investing, I had to fill out a form, send it to the HR department, that person. I mean, like a lot of legwork, whereas now, like that.
And you think about compliance, okay? Because once you become part of SERC, now you're part of SERC. So the compliance is a shared compliance, and it's mainly on the organization of SERC. So now the person that handles this for your county office doesn't wake up in the middle of the night in a cold sweat going, oh boy, did I do this? Did I do that? No, it's all been taken care of because you're part of us. So basically, you say, okay, well, what is the downside to this? Well, there's really only one downside that I can think of. And for us to come in, and this is something that I had to actually kind of ponder and struggle with in the process, is I realized that if I'm going to get to the pricing and the service level that I want to get at for each system, I have to be the only vendor that's in there. Okay, so I have to be single vendor. So if you have 5 people, like the guys with the pizza and all the different things in the room, for me to do it, I have to be the only one. Well, why is that? Well, the average participation in 403Bs and 457s across the country is like 27%, 23 to 27%. So if you take that 23 to 27% and then you split it up amongst 5 different vendors, nobody's ever got enough market share to make anything really good. So you'd think, oh, well, the more competition, it's going to be better pricing. You've got such a small piece of the pie, you can't really be competitive. Well, if you come in and you're the only one, you think of it like in the case of like if you're a high school athletic director and you're bringing in Cokes or Pepsis. If you have Coke machines and Pepsi machines, you don't get a good price on either one. But if you go solely with Coke, all of a sudden that price drops. Why? Because they can predict how much they're going to sell. They can predict all these different things. So that was the one thing for me in the process. I was like, okay, the only way I'm going to be able to do this is go single vendor. So I took a couple weeks off and I'm like, I just need a break. I need to think about this, pray about this, just go through the whole thing, because there's a chance that I could possibly put some of these folks that I've known for years out of business, because if our pricing is that much better, there's a chance that they may not be able to, if they don't change, it could put them out of business. Well, I had watched a documentary on Kodak Company, and a couple months earlier, and Kodak Company was one of the largest corporations in America, and one of their employees created digital photography. And they kind of treated it like a novelty, and you'd have the Kodak digital camera, but they really didn't go all in. Kodak still exists. They have about 50 employees. They created a market shift and they didn't change it. So I started thinking, okay, this is a market shift. I'm not like Mr. Brilliant. I'm just a guy who likes to help people. So if I thought of this, somebody else is going to think about this. There's no greed factor in this for me because I make no personal money. I'm in the perfect position to do it. If I don't do this, somebody else is going to do it and may not treat those other competitors with respect. The market is going to shift with me or without me. So I thought, who's better to do it really than me? Because I don't have those external factors tainting me along the way. And I get to help the people that, as an educator, you get to change lives. As a CPA director, I got to help the people that change lives. But doing this, I'm back in the business of changing lives. Because you think about this, if you have a 600 employee school system, they join SERC, and most people that join us auto-enroll all their employees. So, we end up having about 90% participation, after an auto-enroll. Well, if we're saving them, $25,000 on the low end over a 20-year period, times that many employees, you're looking at about $12 to $15 million in generational wealth that's staying in a community over the next 20 years. That not only changes the lives of the people that live there, but it changes the entire community. It makes it a much wealthier community. And just like with the 4.6 billion in Georgia. So by doing this, we're truly changing lives. So that's so I was like, you know what? Yes, we will be the single vendor. And, you're not going to buy, the other hard part of that too, though, is you may have a vendor in your system that's like related to a board member or something, but, would you pay $4,000 more for a car from somebody just because you know them? Well, probably not, so, and ultimately if people don't choose us, if they don't use us, that type of thing, we're still having a positive impact on the market regardless. So, really for us, I think it's the no-brainer. It's one of those things when you lay it out, it's like, okay, it costs the system nothing to go with us. It saves your employee money. It reduces the amount of stress on your county office. It increases the number of people that are participating. It's impacting the community. It's like the only thing it might do is hurt somebody's feelings or take away some of their business of stuff that they've been doing, but they've been doing it at a price that's not really been fair in a lot of ways to begin with. So, after thinking about that, praying about that, reflecting, I was like, no, I need to go forward with this because it is the right thing to do.
Excellent. One of the things that I want to make sure that I ask you now, because we've talked about the number of school systems in the state of Georgia. We've talked about these different programs, stuff like this. So let's kind of list some details about why a school system would want to talk to you.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I can go high level if you don't, and then I'll let Kevin kind of jump in the detail, because this is just where I look at it. So, hypothetical story. We're going to say John and Lisa both graduated from that great university, back-to-back national champion, University of Georgia, both with teaching degrees. Go Dogs. So John decides to move to Atlanta and teach. Lisa decides, let's say she moves up north. We'll say she moves to Dalton. Both the same degrees. They have the same investments. John, because he's in a bigger school organization, we'll say he invests $100 a month. Lisa does as well. So John's $100 a month. He's in a bigger school district. Out of that $100, $99 is invested and $1 goes towards fees. Lisa, because she's in a smaller school district, same investment, same amount, $10 goes towards fees. So she's only investing $90. Is that fair? That's what, to me, it boils down to. And just listen to Kevin. It's not. So what SERC does at a higher level, and Kevin will get into the nitty gritty, but to me, it lets teachers keep their hard-earned money no matter where they go in this state. It's not fair if you go to a large district and you get to make that isn't fair. So that's what I love about it.
Yeah. And it's really about kind of, most people are called to be educators. We don't go in it for the money. And, you're talking about, a lot of times we think about other people. It's almost a badge of dishonor to think about yourself as an educator, but yet it's still your life. And, you still have people, you still, have to take care of yourself. And in going into retirement, you think about the amount of time you spend more time with the children in the classroom than you do with your own children. And you do this year after year after year after year after year. And when you retire, and teacher retirement is great. Love teacher retirement. Yeah, great. But again, it's a 40% pay cut. So how do we, just help people set up so that they can be successful, think about themselves, but do it in a way that you don't have to think about yourself all the time. Okay, we came in, we set it up, we made it easy on you, we made it easy on the county office, we made it streamlined, and you're going to get the best of the best. And the cool thing is the more people that join, the price keeps going down, keeps going down, keeps going down. So like for ERISA, okay, how many employees do you currently have?
15.
15, okay. For you to get anything in 403B land at all, you're looking at a very high fee annuity product. So, you take that $100 you're investing, it might be 85 that you're actually getting out of the 100, whereas somebody in Gwinnett's getting the 99 out of the 100. We brought in West Georgia RISA, had 37 employees. Okay, so they're getting pricing of a good medium to large size school system for 37 employees. They didn't have to do anything special. They didn't have it. Basically, it was all upside for their employee. And you say, well, what about the stuff that they already have? Well, we're a fiduciary, so we can only do things when we come in. The existing accounts they have will continue on. There would just be no more payroll deduction for it. So they can opt to switch those over into an individual retirement account if they want, or they can take the money that's in there and they can put it now into SERC. So if they already have something with VALIC, all that stuff, or Corebridge, that automatically switches over. There's no fees at all. Some plans have fees. We have no fees. So like if you have an existing 403B, there might be a 5-year surrender charge. So you sit on that one for 5 years. It still continues to make money for you. Well, you put your new money into the SERC plan through payroll deduction. Once that 5-year penalty's up, you move that money over as well. But some people have these older plans that have like a guaranteed rate. And they're pretty good, especially if it depends on when they were in. It would be folks that are probably at retirement or past retirement that have had them for a very long time. And the cool thing about Corebridge is they'll actually meet with you and they won't let you do things that are detrimental to you. So they won't let you switch money over or do anything if it's not in your best interest. So again, it kind of comes back to that whole, it's all upside type thing, and ends up being a really safe bet. The other cool thing about SERC, I'm like, when we decided to do it, if somebody does not want to be part of SERC, I want them to be able to basically write me a notice, and in 30 days, they can step aside from us. No penalties, no anything. Now, for 99.99% of the people, that means their fees are going to go up because they're going to have to find somebody different. It's going to be more expensive. But if for some reason, like they've just gotten so big on their own that they've reached colossal size or something and they can beat SERC, which is unlikely, or if they just didn't like the process or whatever it may be, 30-day written notice, and all their employees are not going to be penalized for it. And you have, it's not an annuity. It's actually a mutual fund platform. So you have a lot more flexibility. So for the folks that just kind of want to get in and stay in and not really mess with anything, perfect. We've got that. We've got a fund lineup set up for you. For the person who's kind of the guru that wants to really get in there and start kind of doing some things, they can actually get in there and pick from different funds that can be a little more high risk, that type of thing. And you think about tolerance risk, you've already got TRS. So automatically you can go a lot more aggressive with your additional stuff you want because you've got that 60% base. Now, some people still want to stay conservative, and obviously that's a personal choice, but there's so many cool options with this that you just don't have on your own. And it's just easy. Like, so if a system wants to join SERC, they can contact me. We come down. I bring the registered investment advisor. I bring a representative from Corebridge. We go through. We can look at what they currently have and basically how much we're going to save them. And again, most systems we're saving them half right out of the gate. And then as time goes on, we'll continue to get lower and lower. And eventually, we'll have pricing that's once we reach 150 million in assets, we're going to have ridiculously low pricing that, just unless you're a Gwinnett, you're not going to be able to touch.
Gotcha. So I want to make sure that I ask this question. All right. So, and I'm going to use made up names. So if you're a school system and you go with SERC, but before you were with, let's call the company A, and the person, the teachers that are in your school system, when you go with SERC, they had money in, and you mentioned this a little bit. I kind of want to take you back here. Say, well, what happens to my stuff? If we were with company A before, now we're switching to SERC. What happens to the monies that I put with company A?
Sure. Well, with company A, if there is no surrender fee, which in a lot of cases, sadly, there are surrender fees, you wouldn't want to, if there's a surrender fee, you don't want to switch it over into your SERC account right away. If there is no surrender fee, you need to look at what you're earning on that. And if it's a guaranteed very high rate, you probably want to keep it. And again, that's where Corebridge comes in. Their individual financial advisors will meet individually with those teachers and say, here's what you have. It's not in your best interest to do this. You want to keep that one. That one will continue because it's got money in it. It's still in funds. It will continue to make money on its own, even if you don't continue to put money into it. So that can sit by the side for the next 5 years and continue to earn money. At that time, when the penalty goes away, you say, okay, is it better for me to put it in SERC right now or leave that one over there doing that? In the meantime, this new account that you're putting into is earning a lot more because you have a lot less fees. Because remember, this pot of money over here is being hit with fees that are higher than what SERC is. So you typically are going to want to move it over as quickly as you can, but you don't want to take a penalty. And so you just have to, and that's why I said Corebridge is uniquely kind of qualified in this area. I don't think I could work with another company that would have the service level that I need, because I need that for anybody that joins SERC. They need to have the highest level of service available, and they need that individual counseling in certain cases. In some cases, it's a pretty easy decision. Oh yeah, go ahead and switch it over, or that type of thing. But if there's details that need to be worked out, that's where those folks come in. And I'm doing this so that you end up at retirement with a maximum amount you can have. So one, I wouldn't want to do anything to hurt you, but two, I'm bound by law that I can't do anything to hurt you as well. And so it's a great thing. And if you think about it, Again, we're a division of Pioneer RESA, North Georgia RESA, Northeast Georgia RESA. We're a cooperative agency owned by these 35 school systems as part of those RESAs. Our goal has just basically always been to serve our customers in the best possible way we can. And this is just next level stuff to do.
Very cool. We're getting close to finishing up here. And what I wanted to make sure we do right now is, Kevin and Danny, if someone wanted to follow up and connect with either of you and or learn more, where would you send them?
Well, they can contact me directly. It's Benson at CPA, stands for Cooperative Purchasing Agency, the number 4, schools with an S on the end.com. So Benson at CPA4schools.com. Or they can call me on my cell phone, 706-348-3676. Again, 706-348-3676. And what we can do is, because we're single vendor, this is something that, if you're a teacher and you're listening to this, or if you're a principal or assistant principal, coach, whatever it may be, you need to talk with your county office, because for us to come in, we have to come in for the whole system. We can't come in for an individual person. So we would need to set up where we kind of come in and talk with the people that need to know the information, and we can give them all the information. And the big thing is, if you're a small or medium, if you're not the Gwinnett or Cobb County, the really, really large systems, you probably need us to come in and just look at what you have. And again, there's no pressure from me. You want to do what's the best for your employees. I want you to do what's best for your employees. But part of what's doing best for your employees is looking at what you currently have and seeing what you can get and making those decisions based on that information. And without naming names, we had one particular school system that I had talked to. And I said, listen, we can do really well for you. And they're like, well, we're just not sure. And so they hired a third-party consultant. And that third-party consultant did an RFP. And guess who they chose? Us. Because we smoked everybody, not even close. Not even close. But they spent money on this third-party consultant to do this service for them. And they didn't have to. In a lot of systems, you have multiple vendors. Here's the curse of multiple vendors. You think you're getting competitive rates because you have people competing, but you don't, because nobody has a large enough share to make it worthwhile. And then now you have 4 or 5, say, vendors. Now at a county office, what you have to do is you have to hire a third-party administrator to keep track of all 5 of those, because you don't have the capacity to do that. Well, that's charging each individual person $35 a year, whether they use anything from that service or not. So now, not only have you kind of put your employees at a disadvantage by having multiple vendors, but now you've kind of put an additional disadvantage on them at $35 a year. Well, $35 a year doesn't sound like much. But if you're a certified employee, if you're a parapro, if you're a bus driver, if you're a nutrition worker, $35 a year is a huge hit to what you're doing, because that not only are you paying that $35, but you're taking that $35 out of there, so it's no longer gaining that compounded interest. So, if you're listening to this, it's very simple. We come in, we'll just give you the data, and you make your choice. But to not look at the information is really a disservice to yourselves and to your employees, because it's really the no-brainer of no-brainers. And, ultimately I respect anybody's decision. They can use this for the field turf. They can do it on their own. They can use this for supply, whatever it is. We're here to serve, and we're highly successful, and we will continue to be successful. But it's something definitely worth looking at. If you never look at the information, you won't know.
Thanks so much. This has been awesome. I got one last question for you guys, and it goes like this. If you had a chance to speak at a conference of school system superintendents, what is something that you would want them to leave the presentation thinking about?
For me, Kevin just summed it up perfectly. It doesn't hurt to take a look at it. Serve your teachers, your school workers, those bus drivers, cafeteria workers, serve them. I mean, as a superintendent, we want to be in charge of the students, obviously, but also, the people that are under us. And it takes nothing to have SERC come out, take a look at what you're currently doing, see how much you can save them. I'll go back to that, illustration I gave earlier. Why wouldn't you want your teacher to be able to save, or your bus driver, or cafeteria worker, or janitor, save more of their hard-earned money? There's no penalty at all taking a look. And then, hey, instead of, once again, giving away $10 to fees, they only give $1. And then you look at that over 30 years, going back to generational wealth and what it can do for a community, and just over time of how that money can compound. To me, like Kevin said, it's truly a no-brainer.
And for superintendents, your job is infinitely harder than it was even 5 years ago. And there are very few positives that you're getting on a consistent basis. Whether you're a new superintendent, a medium term, or you've been there for forever, what better way to put a quick feather in your cap that really, if you choose to go with us, there's an 8-week implementation that your county office does a half-hour call once a week for 8 weeks. And then your employees get a huge benefit, and you look like, wow, look what I just did for everybody, because it's so good. So it's, not only is it the right thing to do, but it's an easy way for you to get a win in a world that doesn't provide you many opportunities to get a win. And it benefits all of your employees. And if anybody's looking at things too, whether you go with SERC or not, I would always basically recommend the auto enrollment for everybody, because what you're doing is you're setting them up for success from the beginning. If they want to opt out, they can certainly opt out. But by setting them up, you're giving them a gift that 30 years later, they're going to be so appreciative that you did for them. And also for employee retention. And, if I can go to work in your county and walk away with a whole lot more money at the end for the same amount of input, why would I work at the neighboring county? You know what I mean? But if the neighboring county joins, all of our prices go down. So it's kind of one of those things like, if you're in ERISA and you have like 5 or 6 systems, you all come in together, you'll bottom out our pricing, and you won't get any. I mean, it's, we've got probably 17 systems in the pipeline right now. Some of them are fully implemented. Some of them are in the process of implementation. We're in 3 states right now: Tennessee, North Carolina, and Georgia. We've got people clamoring for us to come to Alabama. This thing is just going to keep getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And you get a seat on the board, which is really cool. And the one thing I would say to people, though, do it sooner rather than later, because we really are getting to the point where it's starting to get, if you ask me to join today, I've probably got to set your implementation date at least 6 to 8 months out right now. And it's going to get to where it's a year and a half, and you just don't want to be waiting that long. So if you're interested in this, again, the data doesn't hurt to look at, and no pressure from us. We'll do whatever you want, but you definitely need the information.
Awesome. Kevin and Danny, thank you so much for talking with us about the Cooperative Purchasing Agency, CPA, and the Southern Education Retirement Consortium, SERC. And I'm wishing you both the best in all that you do.
Yeah, well, we appreciate everything you do, and we thank you for having us.
Yeah, thanks, Steve.
Hey, you have been listening to Teaching, Learning, Leading K-12, a podcast to help you help kids achieve their dreams. Teaching, Learning, Leading K-12 is a member of the Education Podcast Network. Podcasts for educators, podcasts by educators. Teaching, Learning, Leading K-12 is a member of the podcast network based in Canada called Voice Ed Radio. Voice Ed Radio, your voice is right here. The opinions expressed on Teaching, Learning, Leading K-12 are those of the guests and host. Teaching, Learning, Leading K-12 is intended to share ideas, advice, and suggestions. Teaching, Learning, Leading K-12 is produced for educational purposes. Hey, thanks for listening. It would be awesome if you visited my website at stephenmiletto.com and connected with me, left a review, and listened to more episodes. And by the way, you could also share it with your friends, with your family, and your colleagues. Thanks so much. You're awesome.